Welcome to the Content Podcast, conversations with Silicon Valley's creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates.
Yeah, hi, this is Joe.
Today we talk with Joe Miller. He's a designer, a design educator, president of the San Jose Works Gallery, and also an arts administrator. Hey, Joe, how you doing? This is Daniel.
Oh, hi, Daniel. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, good to speak with you. Haven't seen you in a while, of course. Most of us haven't seen too many people other than, virtually. How are you doing it now? You are teaching at San Jose State, so I imagine all your classes are online, of course. Is that true, or?
That's true, and today's a teaching day, so I'm kind of between Zoom calls here, and sometimes on with the big group, sometimes on individually. But I'm getting ready for next semester where we're all online as well. So I do meet people in the arts out on the street a little bit, where I see people going by on a bicycle or that, or even at Works, we have had some folks in to fetch a piece of art, and so meeting, out on the sidewalk at a little distance for a few minutes, basically.
Yeah. How has that impacted your work for the school, having to do it online? What's kind of like your feelings of that for education purposes?
Well, there's a lot less, of course, looking over the shoulder. There's none of that sort of thing, which in design is quite a nice thing about a design office, about a classroom, is that you kind of look over the shoulder of the student and you notice something that they're not going to bring up to you. And they've got 5 sketches going or something, and you say, hey, what's this one in this corner? And they say, oh, that's just garbage. And you say, no, that's really cool. Like let's talk more about that. And the problem with online is that they're still enthused, they're still talking, but they're not showing you that secret shit,
Yeah. That's kind of interesting. You just don't have that proximity to see that. Now, you've been teaching at San Jose State since 1857, I think.
Yeah. Well, being that I did just turn 59 years old.
Oh,
So,
happy birthday.
and yeah, well, yeah. And I was, the first day that I started teaching, I was 27. So,
Wow.
so going on 32 years here. Yeah.
So you've been at San Jose State for 32 years?
That's correct. Yeah. Well, not counting the fact that I was there for 4.5 years as a student.
Yeah.
So, so pretty
Wow.
much all my life, plus some years. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say? I mean, 32 years of teaching graphic design, typography. How would you bring it down to a nugget if you had to give some advice maybe about graphic design or typography?
Wow. Bring it down to a nugget. Pay attention to the details.
Yeah.
But don't sweat the details. And
The great paradox of life.
Yeah. Exactly. Kind of what I mean about that is that in something like typography, of course, you're concerned about the little things of kerning, but you don't want to forget about the big picture of, is your project sustainable? Does it do something to the world and to people that the details don't take care of? So it's kind of about the giant picture and not losing sight, because so many people do want all of the details of things like typography and that, which I think are glorious things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to look after what we're really doing, what we're really saying, and who we're saying it to, and what that's affecting.
Yeah. I guess that's the thing too. Design is primarily about solving problems, right?
One would hope on its better days. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's the thing, is you want to be able to solve the problem and balance, I guess, the technique and the art as well as the goal of communicating, right?
Right. And to see if there's some sort of aspect of that communication that can be better, that can be more encompassing, more meaningful in some way. And of course, then the delivery of that thing, is it at the very least, is the delivery of it not harmful in any way, but even beneficial, perhaps. Like
Yeah.
from the carbon footprint to um, who it affects and why. And we're talking a lot these days about inclusion and mindfulness of those sorts of things. We should have always been talking about that, but far
Yeah.
beyond inclusion, um, but actually inviting, inviting the overall conversation, making sure that everybody's in on whatever conversation that they need to be in on. And so
Yeah.
you don't just walk into a neighborhood and start talking to people like you live there if you don't. And so it's
Yeah.
about all of those things of being authentic but keeping track of yourself, understanding where you are and who's gonna understand your perspective, and is there a better perspective to adopt, really?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, even as you bring up this, is graphic design specifically is such that crazy balance between art and yet kind of like commercial art, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, you can't do things that are not from your point of view. So just like being an artist, it's your creativity. Even if it's the most corporate project in the world, it's going to be you putting yourself out there, the client can input so much, but
yeah,
unless they're just being the designer, then
yeah,
yourself is going to be in it.
yeah. So then you've been talking, you were bringing up kind of like inclusion and stuff like that. How's that? How have you seen that? And in like sustainability stuff, how have you seen that over your 32 years? That kind of conversation in the realm of design. How's that kind of morphed and come about?
Yeah, well, there's been, a sea change in a lot of this thing, even just in the last several weeks, let
Yeah,
alone years, and so things that have been kind of taken for granted as innocuous in cultural appropriation, but haven't been, they've been quite detrimental in a lot of communities, are finally being viewed as understandably problematic, that simply saying, well, you know, uh, for instance, this product is American Indian when it's not,
right.
or anything like that that has had true detrimental effects for way past when we were born,
Yeah,
and now just finally a lot of realization over what that means in things, and a lot of people still poo-poo that. They say, okay, well, how can a logo affect somebody off in a community? But there's a lot of other expectations around that, and a lot of cultural things that are just so ingrained, like expectations of a child in elementary school around uh, product imaging and that sort of thing, that
yeah,
gets that kid made fun of or pointed out that he's not authentic enough because he doesn't match the picture, to
right.
things like the shouting at halftime, like f the so and so and fill in the so and so with whatever
Yeah,
group is represented by a logo.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Y- I mean, imagine when you started out to do design, you weren't thinking in terms, right? Because especially, for you and me at our age, I mean, there was so much things that were already kind of culturally there, right? So you're raised with symbols,
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
and ideas, and you don't even realize the roots of where those come. So you kind of perpetuate it and move it along, and then now we're kind of seeing a point of like, oh, well, wait a second, there's a whole other interpretation of those symbols, correct?
Yeah, and what you bring up about perpetuating it is like the easy route. The
Yeah,
easy route is to just kind of keep going the way we've been going. And that just feeds into all sorts of other biases. And the question isn't like, well, how much does like the look of a postcard hurt, but how much that it feeds into this sense of the overall biases. And
yeah,
why should it be ratcheted up another half a degree by some piece of graphic design, even if some people consider it to be less significant than something that the president says or whatever. That
yeah,
if everything counts. We're in this, we're in this media culture uh, where everything feeds into everything, basically. From social
Yeah.
media through to a package to whatever. You know.
And when you think about it too, just because especially in graphic design and typography, the goal is really it's always around communication. And if you think the power that has happened through propaganda posters for whichever side, through
Mm,
typography and design, um, kind of even in our day, like, you see a fist that's drawn that gives you an idea of, resist and revolution, and those kind of different iconic symbols, a peace sign, you know. Um, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I never, till we started talking, I kind of forgot about that, the incredible role
yeah,
that
and
graphic design has in shaping culture.
yeah, and it's really interesting that you bring it back a little bit. I'm not sure if you meant like World War II or something like that, or World War
Well,
One,
sure.
but
One and two, yeah.
yeah, no, but you think about World War II and the posters there, and how that they depicted, say, a Japanese person, and of course we had
Yeah,
Japanese people living in the United States at that time, and contrast that with how that a European enemy, I'm putting up air quotes when I say enemy, I don't, and but the concept of enemy was pushed in design a lot, and that's
yeah,
what's a little bit heartbreaking, or a lot heartbreaking, about the last few years, especially. When I think about the Charleston posters and that sort of thing, leading up to those rallies there of the far right, and
yeah,
this depiction of what an enemy is. And even now, right now, in the campaigns that just ended, then,
yeah,
looking at, well, what's a protester, and here in the South Bay, of course, showing these South Africans as protesters, and saying that that's something that the police force of San Jose was was up against. But
right.
and so why pick that image? Why pick, okay, here's a group of Black people, the smallest minority one could think of in San Jose, and but that's the symbol,
Yeah,
of, uh,
yeah,
of this fear, you know.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, that was interesting. I didn't think we were going to go that direction, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's
Well, you start talking about design, and these are, I mean,
yeah,
I created a design ethics course at San Jose State. So of course, that when you start to say
yeah,
design, I mean, some of those things are top of my mind. I love things like typography. I'm working right now on logos for companies, but
yeah,
uh, but I kind of think about that picture of like what has design depicted about human beings, and
yeah,
and what does it continue to depict?
yeah. I'm always fascinated when, because I do photography. So when they put a picture of like a candidate or something like that, I always look at it, and they'll have one that's kind of more smiling and the other one more frowning, and there's multiple images you could use, even actually in um, this last, like the counting of the votes around the this last election. Well, I guess the first counting. Um, they one place had a picture of one person smiling and the other person frowning, and but earlier they had both of them smiling, and I was like, this is very interesting. You know what I mean? Just subtly changed an image, right, for their graphic, and I thought that's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, no, I've somehow I got onto an e-list. Actually, I know how I got onto it. I inherited through my ATT account, like some other Joe Miller's email account, and it was just joe.miller at att.net, one of those ones that you don't use, but it's out there in the world. And apparently this guy was like a right wing fan, and so I started to get the junk mail, and I got off of most of it, but one was coming in, a picture of Nancy Pelosi, and it was
Yeah.
just this fearsome thing, like she had just come out of some sort of looking like some sort of horrific rant, and of course the thing was trying to say that she's crazy,
Right.
that
Sure.
she's out of control. This email is saying that, but again, choosing the photograph actually like seemed to reinforce that. I mean, I think that she's a great lady, but but uh, but
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
that image, and the images that someone chooses. I think one of the most fascinating things about the the Trump campaign recently was the choosing of stock photography, and there was this particular Latino-looking man who I actually saw as a poster um, in the
Oh,
Wells Fargo Bank area of Safeway, and it was a
yeah,
guy opening a checking account. So Latinx man,
yeah,
Latino man opening checking account, and then here he is as a Latino supporter of Donald Trump,
yeah.
and and then he's on to the next. He's been in 3 campaigns noticeably, and it's just this sort of slightly slightly unshaven, nice looking Latino man who looks like a reasonable smiling character, and he's just full of the
Right. Yeah,
kind of
well, he got booked one day to do a bunch of photo shoots, and then they shipped them all out, and then different people use them for different purposes.
yeah, and it's all
Yeah,
for Tony Stone or whatever, and I'm sure that you get a certain amount of that too, and you might impose it on yourself saying, "Well, the last fashion shoot that I did had this, and this type of person in it, so, like,
yeah,
where do you shift to now?"
yeah.
Um, and I think that there's just a whole, watershed of I'm not saying you, but a
No,
whole
yeah,
watershed
yeah,
of possible inauthenticity about that, you know?
yeah, yeah, that's great. When you yeah, and I think, like, even the first person of color or first black person to be on, like, a Vogue cover was, incredibly recent. I can't remember it off the top of my head now, but,
I might have
um
that in one of my talks because, I'm not sure that if it was the first person on a cover, but it was only last year, I think, that the first Black photographer shot a cover
oh, maybe that's what
for
it
Vogue,
was too.
and so that
Yeah,
was in the last 1 or 2 years that a Black
yeah,
photographer finally shot the cover, and it was a Black it was a woman and a big pop star, and I can't remember who now. I
yeah,
can totally
yeah.
picture the dress, which was spectacular and everything. But yeah,
Yeah,
with
maybe that's what it was, which I was surprised because I know that like, even in the early '80s, well, there's always been great, photographers of every color,
yeah.
um, but I would be surprised, especially because like, Albert Watson was one of my favorite photographers, in the '80s, and I was surprised, yeah. Um,
Yeah, I wanna follow that up really quickly. Just a really super quick story. I've been in Silicon Valley, high tech, uh,
yeah.
uh, sort of, promotion for a long time, and, uh, I won't say the client, but a big computer company that, um,
Named after a fruit.
for the hell of it there, yeah. I guess I could, but anyways, I was doing this series of brochures, and they were, hiring me to do some brochures on the outside where one of their designers on the inside was also doing brochures for this, and we were casting these office situations, and so I cast my office situation, and we were in these meetings, and my office ended up with an older white man who they said you can do anything with this office, but the guy who looks like he's in charge should be the older white man. It's a real
Oh,
that's a real conversation in a meeting about casting this photo shoot,
that's
an
crazy.
expensive photo shoot, and so my my brochure had in it that, and there was a young Black man who was quite perfectly dressed, like perfect business attire, tie, and everything. There was another Black man who was quite casual with who looked like he was friends in this hypothetical story with a young white man who was also casual.
Yeah,
There was a white woman, and then there was a pregnant Asian woman. She was a model also, but I cast her while pregnant to be in this office situation. So it was an
yeah.
extensive photo shoot with several shots throughout this big brochure. And then the companion brochure came out, and I don't know if you remember the Obsession campaign. Um, I believe it was called
Uh,
Obsession. The
was it
the
a Calvin Klein one or something? Was
Well,
that
it was a fragrance, and
yeah, yeah,
and it was all of these sort of Adonis-looking young, all
yeah.
white, super tanned white people, and that was the other brochure. That was the office of the other brochure. I mean, they were clothed because the Obsession ones were all naked, but
Yeah.
that was the brochure that came out next to my brochure with this actually relatively, human-looking sort of folks. I'm not trying to cast myself as the hero there, but it was a shocker,
Yeah.
both
Interest
a shocker that I would be told to use the, do whatever you want, but the older white man. And then, of course, the in-house brochure came out, and it was just this. Everybody was 29 years old, super
Yeah,
muscular, and tanned.
like this, yeah, a fictitious kind of
Yeah.
representation. Yeah. Um, so, uh, teaching 32 years, and also you have been involved in San Jose Works Gallery for quite a while too, right? And are you
Mhm.
still, I should check, are you still the president of the board
I
or?
am the president of the board there. Yeah, I was the graphic designer and one of their advisory board people for many years, for about 20 years, and then for the
Yeah,
last 10, I've been president of the board. There was a really great group of people, and myself included, not necessarily at the forefront of that, but pressing it along initially to sort of rescue Works. Works had gotten into a lot of trouble just a little over 10 years ago. We're in
yeah,
a really great shape right now. We have threats and all that stuff that are out there in the world, but we're in very good overall kind of shape, I think, politically, financially, and that sort of thing.
yeah,
Not spectacular, but anyways, yeah, there was myself and several other people, not just helping me, but leading the way to bring the organization back from the brink, so to speak.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
so the Works Gallery, what would you say? I mean, it's local, but why don't you give us kind of a little bit of its mission?
yeah, Works San Jose, our immediate tagline is kind of like community art and performance center, and what that means is that it's very much public access. So Works San Jose brings in a first chance for a lot of visual artists as well as literary artists, people who write poetry, but people who do performances, people who do video. Uh, and of course, we're very much known for the visual arts. For everything from paintings and that sort of thing um, to video representation and digital
Yeah,
art and so on. But it's a place where people who are kind of mid-career might do something that nobody else wants to believe in just yet until they prove it. And
right.
so Works is this place where a lot of people can prove it, and so the curatorial aspect of things, the people who run an exhibition, really, they do it with our help there, but oftentimes they're like a first time person. It might be somebody
Yeah,
who's even still in college, or that, and we have people in our exhibitions who are still even in junior college to maybe even now and then high school and that sort of thing, getting their
yeah,
first pieces up somewhere public.
yeah. That's awesome.
Then they'll be
Uh,
right next to Tony May or one of those people who's collected in
yeah.
museums and that.
Okay, and then one of the things that you do is a member show that's like kind of auction and stuff like that, right? And you take submissions in, or
Yeah, so every year there's a member show where if you're a supporter of Works, you can be a member by buying a membership, but also by donating to the auction, donating a piece of art, by volunteering a certain number of hours. People become member.
Mhm.
So there's an exhibition of that, which is typically around just shy of 100 people, and
Yeah,
then we have every year an open call exhibition, completely open
yeah,
to anybody who wants to bring in a piece based on whatever the concept of the show is, and that usually has more like 130 or so people in it. There we kind of limit the size and that sort of thing usually, but
yeah,
then the auction where people can donate a piece and see how the public responds to it, and it, we've for a long time had that people could keep half of what it generates in the auction. I know that was a new thing for a couple of organizations just this year with COVID, but we've had
yeah,
that for quite some time.
yeah.
And then in our regular exhibitions, if a member artwork sells, then the artist keeps 90% of it, and
Oh,
75% if they're not a member. So still a lot
yeah,
more than say a commercial gallery or that. You know,
yeah, yeah.
'Cause
That's great.
we're not trying to make money off of artists. In other words.
Yeah, right. And how are things going? I mean, COVID, of course, shut every gallery on the face of the earth, and so how are you guys faring, and what's going on, and um, what's been kind of the
Yeah.
the pivot?
Well, it was easy to pivot some events, that they just went on to Zoom. So we maybe took a month off or so before we got going with the spoken word poetry things online. So Well Read and Flash Fiction Forum are running. Well Read, I think, is the second Tuesday of every month, so it's coming up tonight as we
Yeah.
speak, and um, and then Flash Fiction Forum every other month. So those pivoted to Zoom. We
And
did
those are with San Jose Poet Society, is that correct? Is it a part of that
Poetry
too?
Center San Jose. So
Poetry Center, yeah, yeah,
they do the curatorial aspect of it, and then we do some of the financial aspect and the venue aspect of it when it has a venue, and
yeah,
even
yeah,
still with Flash Fiction and that sort of thing. Then we provide the Zoom venue and
yeah,
and we pay the curators to all of those things. But we also went to online with some exhibits. So we uh, right away when the social unrest started after the murder of George Floyd, then we immediately we saw all of these sort of corporate messages out there,
yeah,
saying, "Well, we believe in Black lives and that sort of thing too," and you know that's a nice thing to say, but
right,
we wanted to show that that's kind of like the action that we do. That actually, we have had completely African American shows before, even though that's a very small minority here in San Jose,
yeah,
not in the Bay Area, but in San Jose. But um, in our view, we weren't going to put out a statement. We were going to put out an exhibit. So we
yeah,
invited people to contribute to an exhibition that's called "For Mr. Floyd, Ms. Taylor," and dot
mhm,
dot dot after that. And people should go
yeah,
to our website, just workssj.org. You can go there, and it'll send you to the site. And and see the online exhibitions. There's about 70 some works that went up onto that exhibition, and people could still actually submit. And we have right now. We started last Friday a window display of that with video projections and so on, and that'll be
yeah,
up this coming Friday as well, with several monitors and that sort of thing, going through the names of Americans, Black Americans killed by vigilantes and law enforcement while unarmed and while not being threatening. And so,
yeah,
um, one of those really incredibly heartbreaking aspects that also has been with us since
yeah,
before we were born, and now, like, good that we're having the conversation now, but kind of dumbfounding
right,
that it took all of this to have that conversation. But that's kind of at works where we live, is in this case of community things and things that concern the community. So if
yeah,
something comes up as a big concern, you can pretty much bet that we're thinking about who can mount a show on that, or who could
yeah,
mount an event on it. You know,
yeah, yeah, because you guys have done stuff with about ecology, right? And like
many.
a lot of different, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and there's been different focuses on the ethnic experiences and
mhm,
the LGBTQ
mhm,
community, as well as others, and then some that are just issues oriented. Some one of the ones that when this thing that we're dealing with right now with the elections and that first started to
yeah,
happen, we launched a show called Alternative Facts, and
oh yeah,
and it was right after that phrase was first kind of introduced, not long after the current president was elected, and just a massive outpouring of political views. And the
yeah,
organization, where our organization, is a 501(c)(3), so we don't put out political position papers. We're not allowed to do that, but we certainly foster those kinds of opportunities for people, uh, as artists, to say whatever that they want to say about it. We typically
yeah,
don't edit any of those things, even if an artist has a sort of harsh point of view, we're there showing it.
yeah. For you, what would you say as being an artist yourself and a creator? Um, being a part of teaching as well as a part of the gallery and seeing work come in. How has that shaped you as far as for either your commercial work that you do or just for your own personal design work?
Yeah, in my career, I started out as a sort of in-house designer when very young. I was in-house at Atari, and then went to the world's largest PR firm, Burson Marsteller, which was owned by the world's largest advertising agency at the time, Young and Rubicam, and that was kind of the start of my career. I was a young 20 something kid at
Yeah.
that point, really, and so, uh, then I went out on my own when Burson Marsteller's Silicon Valley decided to close. Then I started to get calls from so many people laid off that it was a question as to, do I keep looking for a job or do I open my own little office? So I opened my own
Yeah.
little office, Joe Miller's company. And it was about a year after that that I was asked if I'd consider teaching by a former instructor of mine, Sam Smith. And I thought, wow, this could be really interesting, and I had no idea if I could do it, but that's kind of become my design office in a way. I mean, not my
Yeah.
design office. I don't direct the students that way, but uh, um, but it
For the
became the
inspiration, you mean, that you
well,
get?
yeah, it became the place where I can, like, see a lot of activity going on. So I
Yeah.
might come back to my office, which now for the last few years has been at my home, just because it got so terrible to commute from San Jose to Santa Clara, really. and and so, I decided to work from home, and so that can be an isolating experience even
Yeah.
before COVID, and so teaching for many years has given me that community, given me that sense of, hey, I'm in a big design office, and uh, and the students have just been really, really great, response to the kinds of ideas that I've had, and when I started this ethics in design class, ethics and professional practice course, which is now required for most students, and so there's like four
Awesome.
sections of it running, and I do two of those each semester, plus then another design course. And the response to that, which, here it's a required course, it's much more academic, and I thought, well, maybe, people are gonna hate this because, like, it's about really learning information and intellectual property to cultural appropriation to whatever, and,
Yeah.
how employment works, the response has been fantastic. People say, I've certainly everybody doesn't, but I've heard, like, "This is my favorite class,"
Yeah.
somebody's favorite class this semester is somebody's favorite class overall, or that they just feel prepared. They feel prepared
Yeah.
for their place in this um, design community to go out, and to start learning for real.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like
Right.
they think they've got it all. Of course, they're pretty realistic kids there, but that's been really heartening, and San Jose State is it's a really interesting, great place for the students. I I dislike, of course, the politics of the university, and nowadays I just try to stay away from that. Uh, but of course, the people in the classroom are not about that,
Right.
and they're fantastic. They're real. Sometimes I mean, heartbreakingly real. These are,
Yeah.
I've had students who are literally like, they're borrowing for a month space on somebody's couch because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all I've got, and so
Yeah.
it's it's that up against the great design adventure here and there, um, and plenty
Yeah.
of people who are using things like food banks and that sort of thing, and that's I can't even imagine now because that was the condition before COVID, and
Right.
now
Yeah.
here we are where maybe their part-time job is gone, perhaps, so
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
yeah,
it sounds to me like having that connection with San Jose State, right, is giving you a great opportunity not only just to have like a sounding board and community, but to me, it sounds like it's kind of like giving you empathy or at least like see the humanity, right, that's out there rather
yeah,
than
and
just,
I mean, I
sitting and looking at
yeah.
kerning and letting and
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that wasn't the early part of my life, was not graphic design. Eh, I'm not sure well, I guess I do know how I fell into graphic design. I mean, I grew up in Richmond in the East Bay,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
very working class neighborhood, of a place where there'd be knife fights at my junior high, and I was held on the floor with a knife to my face once, there, and then to where that there were unfortunately gunfights at my high school, and people
Yeah.
were shot. I was not involved in those, fortunately, but it was nearby, and
Yeah.
and so that was kind of the community, and then going to San Jose State, um, where maybe when I came here in 1979, and that fall, downtown San Jose looked pretty empty that way, and
Yeah.
and it was a totally different kind of community that didn't have the kind of commerce that it has now, and so on. But anyways, that was sort of my upbringing. Was I was not I didn't my father died when I was very young, like 10, and so it was just me and my mom. So we were never financially well off by any way, but we were also not in trouble. It was like
Yeah.
the safety nets were in place back then, and that sort of thing. Um and so we got along okay, um and so coming out of that, I'm not saying that that's like all the schooling you need for what the world is about, and that, um but I think that there's some of that empathy, that I got
Yeah.
from those experiences, that I wish, I don't wish everybody had the experience I had, but I wish everybody kind of
Had, yeah, that
understood
connection.
that bit about what empathy really where empathy comes from, like
Yeah.
what it means,
Yeah. Totally.
and,
Yeah.
because it's tough to impart sometimes, um,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know yeah,
What,
and that's what I think design has to do in our society now, is that there's so many things that need to turn around in the way that in politics we speak to one another, the way that in social
yeah.
media a lot of people speak to one another, the way that we
Yeah.
speak about the planet, a lot of those attitudes, I think I think design can help the messaging of that. It's not going to solve it,
Right.
but I think it can push the needle, if other areas also push the needle, you know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It could be it can be the medium in which that conversation can begin to open up a little bit more. Do
Mhm.
you have, like a mission statement for your life or something that kind of keeps you going or a philosophy that you kind of live by?
Wow. It's like that. Um, okay, get up today and make yourself work. Um,
That's a good one.
that's it's a I mean, just that basic thing is a challenge. I mean, you just say, "Okay, like,
Yeah.
okay, now I'm on to the next thing. What's the next project?" And where can you just bear down and say, "Hey, I can make this talk with my students, the talk before they talk." And I wouldn't be the only one talking in class, but introducing a subject, can I do that a little bit better? Is there a better example, or something to bring out? Is there a better way of phrasing it that isn't
Yeah.
that isn't stupid and judgmental or whatever? And the same thing with design. Um, I'm working on a couple of books right now, and I'm thinking, but do I really have the best cover for this book? Could I
Yeah.
push that? Could I push that stupid typography a little bit more, and so on?
Yeah.
And just taking another look. That's kind of like my philosophy, is like, take another look at this and think, like, um, are you letting it go? Are you
Right.
saying, okay, well, this is good enough? Because I just hate to stop at good enough, really.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like the dilemma of an artist, right? Where you like what you do, but you don't like what you do because you know there's better that could be done.
Mhm.
Do you
Yeah,
find yourself kind of in
yeah.
that
Oh,
dance?
yeah. No, and that goes out to stuff with works as well, because there, I mean, we on a basically on a shoestring budget. We're one of the smallest nonprofits in San Jose in the arts or anything. With
Yeah.
I think we bring in something like $60,000 a year, basically, and spend just about that amount.
Yeah.
And we're growing, and we'll grow past that, and we've been past that before, and historically, but with that, we're trying to show things in a museum quality kind of thing, and that's I do a lot of the exhibit design there as well, just helping people through that. And because that's one of the things that I do as a graphic designer is exhibit. But there it's like you're trying to say, okay, can this title wall like just be a little bit more spectacular for people and remind them of the stuff that goes on at a good museum and so on. Yet, we're trying to do that with no funds, basically, or very little,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
and so from your personal work, and I know you do that too. You say like, is this the best setting for this shoot and all of that, and maybe we've got to go a little bit further, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you do that with the typography as well as with a logo design, thinking like, well, have I kind of been here before? Is there some place I
Right.
haven't been before that I can go with this thing, whatever that thing is.
Yeah. Now, I heard through the rumor mill that mill that works might have to move. How's that all coming? Can we even talk about that publicly?
We can certainly, yeah. Hey, we're open to a fault, as we've been called before by grant makers with works. We've been called honest to a fault because we will talk about our problems, even if they're our fault. Which of course needing to move is not really our fault, but that doesn't matter. We do need to move.
Yeah.
That's been delayed. It was supposed to have happened by now, but then COVID and all
COVID.
sorts
Yeah.
of things. Our landlord is Team San Jose, and we're in a building owned by the city of San Jose. And for a while, Team San Jose, with their previous CEO, uh, had wanted to turn the space into offices. And so the city was not backing that because they said, well, closing works for offices just doesn't sound like a great trade off. Um,
Yeah.
and so then somehow or other they got this idea that Works would be a great space for a small visitor center, and then they could
Oh,
still
okay.
do some of the offices, but it would be a little visitor center attached to the convention center, plus some high end offices for their officers in the CEO, the CFO, and that sort of thing of Team San
Yeah.
Jose over in that area. And so, because of COVID, of course, there's nothing going on at the convention center, so there's no revenue. And so,
Yeah.
Team San Jose is supposed to fund this when it happens, but now they don't have any funds coming in, so it's definitely put off for a while. So we're not under
Yeah.
pressure to leave at this time. Our lease is up in June of 2021, but we've already been told that we're welcome to stay past that by Team San Jose, who doesn't have the wherewithal, the funding to now do this transition
Yeah.
because they'd literally
Yeah.
have to demolish our space and start over. We are talking with some other partners that I won't go into, but for
Yeah.
a possible place downtown that could happen that brings together a few arts organizations into
Yeah.
a kind of collective area across town. Um, that could be very exciting. At the same time, it seems it seems heartbreaking to have to leave SOFA to say,
Right.
well, there's only a half a dozen little art spaces in SOFA, and I
Right.
kind of compare that to the 60 or so galleries in the gallery area of Oakland, or the I don't know,
Yeah.
160 or so in a couple of different neighborhoods in San Francisco, to
Right.
600 galleries in Chelsea and New York City. So,
Right. Yeah.
but we've got about six here, and they're all kind of together. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and It'd be great to stay part of that and not move like even 5 or 6 blocks away. But that's looking a little bit more like a reality,
Yeah.
probably around late 2021, maybe 2022 or so, that we might have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's still kind of up in the air and in the works, if you will.
Yeah, and the city has said that Team San Jose should help us out with things because um, their leadership before was saying that we would be part of the long-term plans of the convention center, and that was something that was brought up to us. Uh,
Right, because 'cause they're gonna do a big
yeah,
build
is
of
saying,
stuff,
well,
yeah.
and our interpretation of long-term was certainly more than a year or two. So,
Right, yeah,
um,
yeah,
yeah, and that's when, after being told long-term, and then we sunk. several tens of thousands of dollars into things like new flooring and new lighting on the sidewalk and planter boxes down the thing for safety, down the
Right.
sidewalk for safety and for appearance, and doing all of these upgrades to make our guests both safer and a better experience. And then a
Yeah.
few months later, being told, well, okay, now we're going to change your lease to 1 year instead of multi-year. And so
Yeah.
um, that's kind of
Wow.
that's kind of why we complained. And unfortunately, some of the
Rightfully so.
powers that
Yeah.
be, District 3 and so forth, are still kind of talking like we were demanding forever, and we've never demanded forever in this space, or we've never
Yeah.
demanded anything. We've been begging for we've been begging for long term, and we got it, and then it was changed. So
Long term became short term. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, hey, I really appreciate you taking time to talk and all the work that you do in the area, and just like the way that you support the arts, not only with the works, but you always show up at different shows and galleries and openings, and just what your impact you have with students here too is awesome. So,
Yeah, and if
um,
I have worked for a lot of arts organizations, as even just this last year, I did projects for the Mexican Heritage Plaza, the School of Arts and Culture there, as well as for SV Creates, where you work.
yeah,
Was one of my clients this last
yeah,
year,
you did
and
did yeah, you did the SV laureates
yeah, the laureates awards I
awards.
designed
Yeah,
those.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
the designer for the
Arts Council.
identity of the previous thing. The Arts Council Silicon Valley
Yeah,
was
yeah.
my things, and spent several years with a lot of different organizations. People can go and check
Yeah,
out
you
the
have your hands in a lot of a
website.
lot of stuff.
So
Yeah. Well,
it's been
cool.
fun, and it's been great to have this as my community, and great to of course meet fantastic folks like you, and
Yeah, well,
people
yeah,
who
it's
want
been
to
great.
be here in this place where creating is weird. And
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Joe, and hopefully I'll be seeing you out and about soon.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
So
Yeah,
have
let me know where you're shooting next, and I'll drive by.
yeah, just right by. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Well, have a good day.
Okay, take care.
To find out more about Joe, go to his website, joemillersco.com, and also check out the works at workssanjose.org. Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creators. This episode's music is Time Alone by Mild Monk. Follow him on Spotify and also on his Instagram at Mild Monk Music.